Hey everybody, we just held Behring's EB-5 year-end event and we look at 2022 EB-5 immigration's year in review, and then we give a sneak peek at expectations for 2023. Our hour-long panel discussion included Behring's team of immigration attorneys, real estate developers, and even a former USCIS adjudicator that gave us an inside look at USCIS operations. 2022 was full of change. In March, Congress passed the 2022 Reform and Integrity Act policy. We saw multiple USCIS litigations. And finally, in August, we ultimately got a brand new EB-5 program. The new program was improved significantly. It has no retrogression, no backlogs, and even allows for concurrent filing, where investors have even gotten the EAD and travel permits in as little as 3 to 6 months. At the end of the video, we even touched on what to expect for EB-5 investing markets in 2023. After all, in 2022, we saw interest rates increase significantly. The U.S. economic outlook is looking a little grim, and the H-1B employment market is getting rocked by massive layoffs. The world of EB-5 has never been more exciting. During the presentation, we show multiple decks, and links to all those materials are in the video descriptions below. If you find this video helpful, please go ahead and like it, and then also subscribe and get the notifications to get alerts when the next events are posted. So here is to the end of a great 2022, hope for 2023, and here is the replay.
Today we have a packed agenda. We're very, very excited to introduce our new teammate, Greg Sheehan. We'll be talking about the key events that occurred in 2022, the trends that we've seen in the last year, and the trends that we expect to see or that we're seeing as we look ahead into the year to come. And then we will, of course, be doing a Q&A. So throughout the presentation, if you type in your questions into the chat, we'll do our best with the time remaining towards the end to get to everyone's questions. If for whatever reason we don't answer your question, we'll personally reach out to you separately after the presentation, and we can answer your questions then.
Perfect. Just roll. Okay, hey guys, this is Colin, and again, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to introduce our newest teammate, Greg Sheehan, and we are honored to have him and his expertise join us. We had just been on a blistering pace throughout all of 2022, rolling out all the new projects, the 2022 RIA, and we were introduced through a mutual friend to have the opportunity to potentially work with Greg going forward. And it was just absolutely perfect timing for us to be able to add someone with his expertise, his knowledge of USCIS, and his professional immigration attorney background. And we are honored to have him join us and supplement this team that's already what we believe to be one of the best in the industry. And Greg, we are very thankful that you were willing to join this circus, and thank you and welcome, and definitely wanted to introduce you to everyone else. So I know a lot of our investors and a lot of people that we've been talking to have been wondering about you, and maybe if you could just take a moment to just kind of introduce yourself and talk about a little bit about what you know about EB-5, and I'm sure everyone's interested to hear it direct from you.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much, Colin. I'm super excited to be here, and I can tell already from the feedback I've been getting from the potential investors that I've spoken with that my background's just an absolute perfect fit for where we are and where we're going. The deep background that I bring involves more than just my EB-5 knowledge. As you mentioned, as a former immigration attorney, I can really get into the weeds on a lot of issues and give people ideas of some things that might work for their individual circumstances. And so as I learn more and bring more to the table, I think I'm perfectly suited to help us grow in a meaningful way. And I'm looking forward to the future. And it's already, I can't believe it's already December, but yeah, we've been in the weeds here. We're going strong, and I'm really excited for the future of Behring.
That's great. And, Greg, again, we're thankful to have you. And then with everything that we're working on, where our team is growing, a lot of new things coming down the pipe for 2023, and we'll definitely talk about that. throughout this presentation, as well as everything that we did accomplish, and wanting to actually review how deep a year of change 2022 really was for the EB-5 industry, and where we started before it, what happened in 22, and then where that's going to take us going forward. So maybe Peter, if you wouldn't mind just kind of taking us through some of the major milestones and what happened to us here in 2022. And maybe our investors might be not 100% aware of everything that really took place from the beginning in January on, but talking about how that shaped us today, like, go ahead and take us through just a couple of the things that happened here in 2022.
Well, sure. I mean, to say the least, it's been a very eventful year in the EB-5 world. Early on in this year, we had, as everybody probably knows, that the program stopped essentially for the regional center program last year, July. And there were basically USCIS had stopped even adjudicating petitions, just putting everything on hold for nearly 8-9 months. What we did then was we filed our second lawsuit. So if anyone isn't familiar, we filed a lawsuit last year that was successful. It brought back the EB-5 program to 500,000 and under the new TEA rules. But then the program lapsed. And so we challenged that expiration of that program, and we filed that lawsuit. And that was helpful this was in February, which was helpful in providing some pressure on Congress in passing the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act. I think that it was crucial to do this. We ended up voluntarily dismissing this lawsuit, and as a result of the passage of the act, but it put pressure on Congress. It raised the issue that USCIS and the State Department may have been taking missteps these years trying to actually cause these stoppages in the past. And we'll talk about this issue again in a little bit. We then had the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act passed, which is known as the RIA. We were invited to review the legislation, make proposals. We talked to various senators and representatives about the RIA and important measures such as grandfathering protection of existing investors and other measures to get that language passed. The RIA, we do have webinars and topics on this. So I think, as Aaron mentioned, not only if you have questions, just to utilize the chat function, but take full use of our resources on the web. So we have a YouTube channel with lots of tutorial videos. We have a blog and other webinars for replay where we do go through deep dives of each of these topics here. But the RIA is very important for new investors and for existing investors. For new investors, it did create the opportunity for concurrent filing. Well, this is actually for new and existing investors. The opportunity for concurrent filing of the I-485 adjustment of status if you're in the United States already on a valid visa. And it also created visa set-asides for new investors going forward. But for existing investors, in addition to concurrent filing, it created more integrity measures. So to protect the investors' investments and to ensure more quality projects and quality regional centers and good actors going forward. So this includes background checks of the regional center operators. It includes site visits by USCIS, anti-fraud team. It includes the requirement of independent fund administrators to control and monitor the capital, the EB-5 capital. So there's a lot in here, and the RIA was 7 years, in the making, where we finally achieved this. It's just that the implementation of it had a few hiccups, and that led to Behring versus USCIS number 3, which was our third lawsuit, because at the time, USCIS, when implementing the Reform and Integrity Act, took the position that all regional centers were canceled. and had to start over, which could take years in starting over. And this disrupted projects, it disrupted potential investments, and we stepped up to file this lawsuit to point out to USCIS that they were making a misinterpretation of the RIA. We had a successful victory in June of this year with a preliminary injunction. This enabled investors to start filing right away. We got that, we had investors start filing, and we ultimately reached a settlement with USCIS that reinstated regional centers and got us on a solid foundation going forward. As part of that, we were invited to be part of a roundtable with USCIS on a quarterly basis to talk about how to implement the settlement and some of the issues raised as part of the RIA. And that's ongoing. We had our first settlement conference with USCIS in October. The notes for that were officially published recently by USCIS. So if you're interested in that, we can get you the link and share that with you. But it's been, as I said, a very momentous year for EB-5. Some of these reforms, again, are years in the making. Some of it had to be, pushed a little hard ahead with litigation, and this has been a strategy we use as a last resort, but unfortunately, in recent years, it's become a necessary tool to initiate change quicker. But we're finally here, and I think we're off to a good start for 2023.
Yeah, and then just to add on to that, the 2022 items definitely took a lot of activity where we had to essentially, as an industry, fight for our existence, not once but twice, and then now a third time to stop the RCs from being canceled. And eventually, in August of this year, everything was finally settled, and EB-5 was turned back on. The game for EB-5 had changed. The rules had changed. There were set-asides created. Old problems that had made the program almost unusable, talking about 10, 15-year retrogressions, 6 years for some countries, and then other policy issues where certain procedural items would fall through the cracks and make EB-5 even less untenable. A lot of it had been solved, and some of those problems were solved permanently, and then other problems were solved, maybe indirectly, and then may pop up in the future. A lot of things had changed, but what it did is that it definitely reset the industry, and new opportunities were created. And people that now want to immigrate to the United States through investment now have a clear path, and one that works, and one that we hope in 2023 will actually improve even more as USCIS starts to make progress with some of their milestones that we'll talk here going into the future on 2023 and the look ahead and what we expect to see out of the agency and USCIS going forward. But there's still a couple things to talk about with 2022. So, Peter, we can probably move on. But, one of our multifamily investment projects at Hannah Lofts had been going, since 2017-18 and had completed its construction this year. All the jobs created, fully finished, constructed apartments here in the Bay Area. The Grad, our 260 unit, over 1,000 beds of student housing directly next to San Jose State. That project had come to a full wrap up, incredibly successful student housing, even won a Golden Nugget Award for best design in student or faculty housing. Very, very proud of that development team at AmCal and Swinson. Getting that all done. That was a tremendous success that wrapped up this year. A couple photos there for everybody to see. Again, we couldn't be more proud of that one. And then 1900 Broadway, the current flagship project that we have underway, already on the 32nd floor out of 39. We've already hit every single job that we needed to create for all the investors, over 1,200 jobs already. And by the time it's really done, it's gonna be over 3,000 jobs created. This one is our current project that's already under construction. Lucky enough to have all of those construction bids and everything locked in pre-pandemic, locked in at low 2019 rates, constructing through today's market, and then launching in 2023 at the end of the year into a market that literally has no competition coming. We are the only crane in the air in all of Oakland. We'll have no new leasing competition by the time we're open. And we're directly on top of transit in the #1 metro market in the country for investment, VC investment, and institutional players. So like, we're really excited about the future here for 2023 and 24 and beyond. And we do have the download and the updated presentations if anybody wanted to grab that. We'll be getting into even further trends, but another photo of the building, all the glass curtain walls starting to get installed. It's 32nd floor, really starting to look like all the renderings that we've had for so long. It's really nice to see it kind of turn into a reality. From that 32nd floor, pure views, unobstructed, of downtown San Francisco, Salesforce Tower, less than 17 minutes away by BART. Couldn't be a better world-class location. 2022 and even before that, 2021 and carrying forward, the Behring brand has been just on a tear in the EB-5 industry and also in multifamily development, investment, and finance, where we're just racking up awards and recognition, whether as a firm or individuals, and then been featured in a dozen publications this year because of our work. Couldn't be more proud of the team and everything that everyone's accomplished here in the recent history. So for 2022, getting back to EB-5 and what we believe really revealed itself this year. And one thing is for sure, the EB-5 regional center industry has shrunk, and it is shrinking. And this year, when we start looking at the annual filing and some of the stuff that Greg worked on at USCIS with these 956 forms and 956G, you're going to see a whole lot of names drop off the list of approved regional centers. Where it used to be at our peak and call it 2017, 2018 as a regional center industry, Peter, we have 1,000 names that were on the list for USCIS. Then it came down to 600, 600 plus over 2021, during all the litigation items when we had to count up who the survivors were. And then now, when we're talking about 956 forms on the regional centers that do want to participate in the future of EB-5, I think we're down to 100 plus. I know, Peter, if you heard a number, I can't remember what it was, but maybe 120 956 filings. So, 9-1 on what the industry was at before versus who's left. And then who's actively in the market with attractive projects is probably even less than a handful of those players. So the EB-5 regional industry is definitely consolidated. They've probably weeded out a lot of the weaker participants that really didn't have a long-term vision for EB-5. And it's probably a healthy thing for the EB-5 industry going forward, because the worst thing you can do as a long-term investor that has your immigration and your personal wealth tied up into an investment is to have somebody that's not fully dedicated to the EB-5 program and having a long-term participation and getting things done. So ultimately, we should be healthier. The idea of mandamus actions is now, mandamus has essentially become a household name. Everyone knows what a mandamus action, and the ones that don't, and if they're stuck in any processing queues, they're probably going to find out what a mandamus is, because it is literally a court case that, essentially has a judge force USCIS to pick up your petition and act on it if it's been unreasonably delayed. So anybody that's been stuck in their processes for an unreasonable amount of time have been filing mandamus actions and getting their petitions adjudicated. And it has resulted in a significant amount of approvals for individuals that fell into a qualified category with those. So mandamus almost became like the fourth stage of petition, where you had 924s, 485s, 526, but now mandamus is almost part of the process. However, we are hopeful that in 2023, with USCIS hiring, getting the resources that it needs, finishing the fee study that was mentioned in the RIA document, once they get caught up and they meet the congressionally mandated 90 or 180-day timelines for the 526 and the 829s, nobody will need a mandamus ever again, right? That's because processing time should catch up. So we're hopeful for 2020, but for 2022 and before, mandamus actions were popping up everywhere. And there's a couple really good attorneys out there that have made a name doing it and became famous about it. And that kind of also rolled into what our team, with Peter, Aaron, everybody here that learned about suing USCIS with litigation. Now, the curtains have been pulled back and litigation works. People have seen that the government is not untouchable in the court of law. And if something is wrong and if something is broken, and USCIS or any of the other agencies that are involved in these processes, if they didn't really follow the laws, a judge will hold them accountable. And multiple litigations and multiple lawsuits have popped up in various facets. But suing USCIS has kind of become a possible and or normal activity now across the industry. And it's probably part of a pendulum swing where nobody did it before, and then everybody's going to do it. And then hopefully next year and beyond, it won't be necessary. But for the end of 2022, after our litigations had all kind of come to completion and we're all out of the way, a couple other cases have come. And one of them specifically with Bernie Wolfsdorf, talking about the lost visa numbers during the COVID period, when a lot of the family-based visas and the consulates were closed and visas were not being issued, and tens of thousands of visa numbers that could have gone out just are essentially left behind on a desk and were not issued when they could have been. That is the argument that case is trying to make. And we believe it has a lot of merit, and we believe that it's factually correct. But obviously nothing is guaranteed in court, and the litigation needs to play out. And it's a big, long saga and a big, long story. But what Peter was mentioning before about our second lawsuit that we voluntarily dismissed, it will play a crucial role in these lawsuits, talking about the visa numbers, because it ends up that, during the third lawsuit that we had, USCIS and the concept around whether the EB-5 regional center program was actually expired came to light that USCIS does in fact think that the regional center program never expired. And if it didn't, during these COVID years, 2020, 2021, all visas for any retrogress and unused visa should have been allocated to all the employment-based categories. So we're going to see how that lawsuit plays out. And if more lawsuits, whether they're from industry trade organizations or whether they're from the industry itself, whether new lawsuits pop up to go after those unused visa numbers that theoretically could release tens of thousands of more visas into the queues and wipe out any retrogression that ever existed prior to the RIA's enactment. And details on those numbers and how it calculates, it's another conversation for a much longer presentation, but we'll move past that for now. The other item that is a trend for 2022 is that rural projects have gotten all the recognition. And that's because there was the largest set aside and reserve visa category that came out of the RIA was for rural projects. And those are locations that have a population of less than 20,000 people and or fall out of a MSA location. So now that everybody thinks that it is absolutely the cure-all for the EB-5 category and retrogression itself, now everybody is wanting to look at rural projects. But there's a problem if everyone goes rushing toward a single category all at the same time. So we'll talk about that as a 2023 trend and what that might mean if everyone starts rushing the door for a single project. So moving on, wanting to talk about for our investors and the year-end resources and things that we had, and we just had Aaron disappear off of there he is, he's back now. But Aaron, our managing director of finance and operations,
I'm back.
and definitely in control of all of the good things that our investors get on our investor portal and with all of our fund administration and the investor protection. I was like, Aaron, maybe take us through what happens at the end of the year and where all the investors can start grabbing all the good things that they should be getting distributed here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our investors that are on the line and prospective investors looking to join our platform in 2023, I think this is a really great time of year to refresh what we do, or how we manage our investment platform to be best in the business. And we've built a credible team of investment, real estate, and EB-5 experts. We pride ourselves on having the best projects. We pride ourselves on being a leader in the EB-5 industry, but we also pride ourselves on our investment platform and our investor relations team. And a big part of what we've built over the last several years is a comprehensive investment platform where really our investors can find anything and everything that they need through the life of their investment, from their source of funds documentation, the I-526 packages, to the receipts, to their subscription documents that they signed, every investment report that's been released to date. The annual reports are here, your tax returns are here, a comprehensive history of all the distributions and income that have been allocated to you and earned through the life of your investment at Behring. It's really everything that you'd want to know about your investment with Behring, and it's in this investor portal that you can find all this information.
Like as Aaron and the rest of the team have now kind of come into a lot of the I-829 packages, and you're talking about all of needing access to every single document throughout the entire history of your EB-5. This investor portal and everything that Aaron and the team have put together, you have access to it 24 hours a day. Your attorneys have access to it, your agents, your financial advisors, whoever it is. You have a collective centralized resource to grab every K-1 statement, all of your path of funds information, every bank transfer. Everything is available, and it's all in a centralized location. So this has been a major bonus to everybody, being able to stay organized and also not have to scramble responding to these windows and the filing openings for USCIS when the sustainment periods are ending, 829s need to be filed, and all that. So everything is accessible. And toward the year end, we're going to ask everybody, make sure that they get everything updated on their profile and all their personal information, because when you're talking about wanting to get your preferred returns, wanting to get distributions, and to get information like just make sure all your bank info, all that stuff stays updated. And this is the time to do it, the year end.
Yep. Yeah. And just for the investors that are on and investors that come, what we do in the month of December is we're going to send out an email to everybody in our investor platform, reminding them to check their addresses, check their bank information, make sure your information is updated in our portal. Check to make sure that you have access to the portal. If you don't, contact our team. Check. And then we use this information, and it goes directly to our tax accountants, to our fund accountants, and it helps really facilitate a really smooth Q1 so that we can get all the important compliance and tax documents out to our investors that are required as being a private equity platform. So do keep an eye out for these emails. They'll be coming out in the next week or so. Do log in, do check your information, and reach out to us if you have any questions or problems getting into your portal.
And not only that, it's also crucial to have your information updated just for the simple fact of making the distributions each year. So, for timely distributions, for your investment. So, I think what's interesting and exciting about Behring is that, we actually make distributions. And we've done so since our projects in 2014. So this is done every year. Typically, I think in February, if I'm correct, Aaron.
Yeah, typically February, after we've closed the year and made sure the tax accountants signed off on all of our international and domestic tax requirements.
Yeah, I just think that speaks well to our ability to service the investors in the manner that we say we will. We do need some of their cooperation a little bit, but it's much easier when we have something like this that is just so interactive, easy, clean, helps us put out a good product that our investors deserve.
Okay. Wanting to look ahead here, guys, with 2023 and what we're kind of expecting to see out of the EB-5 industry and investments in general. The first and foremost, we are very active because historically we did a lot of business in China and South Asia. And, I used to do development there. Peter and I lived in China separately for 10-year periods each. But China right now, 9 out of 10 phone calls want to ask about rural investment. And it's obviously because of the set aside that was the largest set aside out of the 3 categories, but still not disproportionately bigger than the TEA, high unemployment areas and or the infrastructure projects. So the rural rampage has started where everybody thinks that they need to be charging toward rural projects. And, that's actually not entirely accurate because, rural set asides, when you're talking about 20% and then at 10% for the high unemployment areas, it's essentially a 2-to-1 ratio. So if 3 people go into a rural project because that is the absolute fastest line that they were told that they will get a visa faster than doing anything else, 3 people go in that line versus 1 for a high unemployment TEA, you now have a backlog for rural that's longer than TEA. So the way the simple math works with all that stuff is that the set-asides are definitely a channel for reserving a visa, but it's not bulletproof. And if everybody, 3 people versus 1 for a high unemployment, and if that takes place, you're going to get a backlog forming for retrogress countries much faster with that rush. And with rural rampage taking place, if you get retrogression and you're looking at a multi-year backlog in the future for these projects, was that rural investment one that you really wanted to make, knowing that you needed to be there for multiple years at a time? So that question is coming up on what does it really mean to be getting into the set aside categories? If it's retrogress, what's going to take place? How fast is it going to retrogress? And then, how deeply? We don't believe 2023 is going to see a significant retrogression build up just yet because 1, the investment amounts are higher. $800,000 is a lot more money than $500,000. And there's just a lot less people that can move fast enough and or as quick as they were with 500,000. And the highest participating countries, that being China, Vietnam, and then even India to a certain extent, the extreme capital controls and how tight those processes have become coming out of China and Vietnam are also slowing down the rush of actual filings taking place. Tremendous amount of interest from these countries as far as joining the program and taking advantage of the RIA policy, but actual execution is probably slower than you would have thought. So the retrogression, again, it might not build up until late 2023, but then when it does, October, the end of the federal fiscal year, is going to release the next year's allocation of visas. So even if this first year does see an element of retrogression, the next year will be following closely with that allocation and releasing, which would relieve pressure from those lines. So we do expect retrogression to potentially pop up and then just immediately be relieved for this first year. Then there's a wild card talking about the lawsuits that are going after the wasted visas during COVID, potentially 15,000 visas to start, as high as 30 to 40,000 visas were unused. If those numbers are recovered and those litigations are successful, there will be no retrogression for multiple years. So that being the case, there is an element of hope and optimism for retrogression even being depleted even more. Another item that we are expecting with the USCIS fee study concluding, which was the RA policy, had said that needed to be done within 12 months of passing the law. So that would be March and April, where that fee study should come to a conclusion, and USCIS will be, finalizing how to get the resources that they need to hit the processing times that were desired in the new law. And that was 90 days for I-526 and then 180 days for I-829 approvals. If they are able to get the staff and get them trained up and get them into the program to hit those dates, 3 months and 6 months would be an incredible improvement versus prior history. And yeah, we'd love to hear from Greg at the end of this, talking about some things that we expect to see from the agency and what that process would be going forward. And we'll do that during the Q&A session. And then Peter, I know you're very familiar expecting what's going on with USCIS and the release of regs. Maybe you can give us a spot on that, on what that expectation is for 2023.
Well, the one thing I wanted, before I get to that, I just wanted to highlight something that's important for prospective investors and existing investors for that matter, in light of retrogression. And that is, for those investors who are in the United States, if you want to take advantage of concurrent filing, which I mean by that, if you want to take advantage of filing your I-45 adjustment of status application and filing your work authorization form and your travel permit form and so forth, you need to do that when the Visa Bulletin is current for your country of origin. So you need to do that. For prospective investors, you'll need to file an EB-5 petition and file your adjustment of status application before retrogression hits. So it's if you are considering this in the future, in 2023, you just want to keep an eye out, one eye out, following the Visa Bulletin, so that you can see, what the trends are and what the likelihood is, so you can help time your EB-5 investment. Because the ability to file concurrently your change of status application and to have the option of getting your EAD, the work authorization, and the travel permit, just gives you the benefit of a green card while you're waiting for the green card. So that mitigates the obviously the negative aspects of retrogression, because you still enjoy the benefits of the green card while you're waiting for that to be approved. So that I just want to highlight that, because that's important. If retrogression is on the horizon, then it's something that you want to follow the Visa Bulletin. And we do have monthly videos addressing the Visa Bulletin and addressing potential retrogression. So just follow us along on our EB-5 YouTube channel, and so you can keep track, and contact us anytime with questions on that. With respect to the USCIS regs, the Reform and Integrity Act, the RIA, had a lot of new provisions in the statute. And that's the statute. And the statute, Congress doesn't get all the details right, or they don't want to put all the details in, because, the experts are the agencies, right? So they want USCIS, who are the experts, to talk to stakeholders in the industry. And that includes immigration attorneys, regional centers, EB-5 investors, through the notice and comment periods, to get feedback and use their own expertise as an agency to pass regulations that will get into the nitty-gritty details about how to implement some of these rules. And that's what we should expect here in 2023. In addition, USCIS and Greg can address this more directly from experience. We'll address some of these issues as well through policy manual updates. They already started this earlier this year to some extent, but they still have a long way to go to catch up and update the policy manual, which you can access online on the uscis.gov website, to reflect many of the new provisions of the RIA, and to clarify how some of these things are going to be implemented. They started this in October as a result of our lawsuit. All the forms, right, the whole 956 alphabet forms that we've seen as part of the settlement with our lawsuit were considered interim final, which means that they could be used right now, but the USCIS needed to send them out to the public for feedback. And that's what has been done. That feedback was collected through October or through November, or through October to the beginning of November. And now they're sorting through that, and they need to respond to those comments and then issue the forms in light of those comments. So that's something that's already started. I expect we're going to see more regulations and policy manual updates in 2023 with respect to some of the other finer details of the RIA.
See where that takes us. So, again, because of our private equity background, a lot of people not only ask us about the immigration aspects and USCIS and the agency and what's going on with the green cards and everything else, but what is the general outlook for investment? You're now 800,000, what used to be 500,000, like where is it and what's going to happen? And a lot of change took place in 2022, especially in the real estate markets where a bulk majority of EB-5 investment gets placed. Real estate was always popular because you were able to invest into construction-based job creation, which essentially could be guaranteed through things like construction completion guarantees, GMP contracts, and all kinds of things that can secure the jobs. But also when the construction contracts and all that stuff are complete, you get left with a fixed asset and a whole chunk of security that is the property. But interest rates drive investment and liquidity and access to capital. And in 2022, that was a major change. We had historically low interest rates all through COVID, almost zero across the board, federal funds rate at near nothing. And then in May, we started to see rapid increases and escalations in the interest rates. Things went skyrocketing. What does that do to the economy? What does it do to real estate? And it really depends on asset class, location, scale, a lot of different things. And it's a deep discussion, but it's something that everyone needs to be aware of what exactly that's going to do to the EB-5 markets and whether they're long tail construction projects and long-term multi-year assets being deployed. Like everything changes with interest rates going up. However, because of COVID, because of supply chain disruptions and relative delays, construction costs across the industries all remain escalated. Typically, when you see waning demand, you'll start to see construction materials and a lot of this stuff start to relax and pricing come down. And 2022 is almost a double whammy where we have increased interest rates, increased inflation, and still elevated construction costs all at the same time. What this means is that projects that have not started yet, projects that are still bidding, trying to get general contractors and subcontractors and all these people to lock in today is extremely difficult compared to people that would have had their projects locked in years ago and perhaps even pre-COVID. Because now with supply chain disruptions and the pricing and all this stuff that's making contractors nervous, everyone is escalating their bids to put in extra contingency to make room for something going wrong, because a lot of subcontractors and people got burned during COVID and during the lockdowns and during the period thereafter, where they're not willing to take that kind of risk any further. So having projects that are already under construction, they're already locked in and nearly delivering, they will have a substantial advantage versus people that are just trying to start today. It's a much more difficult environment to get contracts in, to get financing, to get going, and to get the same level of security and just to make as much progress as the projects that we've had for 1, 2 years and 3 years past. So lenders are pulling back. They're seeing these costs escalate. They're seeing revenues potentially not be there at the time of opening because the economy is starting to dip. The economic outlook is dimming across the board. So your choice of location and asset are absolutely critical going forward. Interest rates go up. The ability to purchase homes becomes a lot more difficult. It becomes a lot more expensive. And you've already seen that year over year, November sales numbers and October sales numbers have dropped over 67% nationally on for sale housing. It is not going to get easier in the year ahead or even 2 years from now. It's going to be very, very difficult on for sale housing. Then you're looking at other things that are cyclical, because consumer spending and even corporate spending right now you're seeing get hacked at. Public markets, all these 10Ks and all of these quarterly statements where everybody's saying we got to cut costs, we're trimming labor, we're trimming any kind of overhead that's excess, we're going to put offices back into the sublease market. It is now time to tighten our belts, save money. Anything that's heavily cyclical or dependent on consumer spending, hotels, resorts, travel, those kind of assets are going to be more sensitive in this kind of environment. So you need to find ways to invest defensively in typically multifamily housing for rent, as well as anything that is critical infrastructure and or even industrial warehousing, cold storage, food related, things that are critical and essential need. These things have done relatively well in these defensive periods. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what you do. If you don't have a really high quality sponsor and a manager and a team that you can trust to do the right thing at the right time with whatever situation they're presented with, that management team will mean everything for your chances of success, protecting your capital, and eventually achieving both your goals of immigration and a successful investment. So for those that have already invested, choosing your sponsor, that's probably already done, and there's not much you can do to change in that in most ordinary circumstances. But if you've had a team that's gone through cycles, that's experienced in these assets, you're going to be just fine in any situation. But again, 2022 was a drastic change in direction for a lot of industries and a lot of asset types, and a lot of things will change going forward, where the EB-5 industry and the projects you'll see really move toward being successful is going to look a lot different than the previous generations. So, we talked about a lot of the interest rate risk and influences and what that's going to do. I probably am stating the obvious when you talk about office projects and some of the headwinds that they're going to face as the new world embraces hybrid work from home, and seeing how sticky work from home and hybrid is, where everyone thought, this is a COVID thing, it's going to pass. It's not going to be something that's permanent. Bosses don't like it. We're less productive. But all of a sudden, everyone kept saying that, and Labor Day was going to be the snapback date where everybody has to head back to the office. And right now, nationwide occupancy in Class A office, you're still sitting at around 36%. So that means that no, it's not a passing trend, and it's not going away 100%. Hybrid work from home is something that is a lot more resilient as a trend, and that's going to stay. And what that means for the office sector going forward remains to be seen, but I know that we've placed our bets. And then you're also starting to see the COVID hotspots and what that tide is doing as it goes out, because there's going to be a wave of delivered supply in almost every single industry, whether it's in the residential markets, for sale housing, on the hotel side. You saw a lot of capital, a lot of developers, and a lot of product start launching in what they call the smile states, the smile region of the Southeast. And now you're actually starting to see kind of what they call a double barrel crisis, where there's nowhere to hide in the for sale market or the for rent, because everything that was for sale ends up turning into shadow inventory for the for rent markets. And then, property prices rise, inflation came with it, rents rose, and then now incomes are going the other direction as you see mass layoffs. So that situation is really affecting these states that saw 20, 30, and 40% increases in property prices for locations that prior to COVID didn't have the median incomes or demographics to support it. And then now with the interest rate increases, what does that do to foreign investors who are actually taking foreign currency and bringing it into the United States and wanting to buy? Our interest rates have made the dollar extremely strong. So now the international buyers that are showing up are not as willing to purchase at these prices. The prices have escalated, the dollar is worth too much, and they can't get financing. So when you see these for sale markets, like Florida is notorious for having a lot of international investment into the for sale condo markets, all of that is going to wash out in a situation like this. And we've seen it happen in typical cycles before. So wanting to keep your eye on, what are the economic factors that are going to drive activity in certain asset classes and certain locations. Marketing is marketing, but economic fundamentals don't change. So when you're seeing all this information, just know the difference between what is marketing and what is actual data. And you're going to see a lot of both coming out over the next year as everybody is trying to throw darts, make their predictions on where the market's going, and try to get in front of it. That's all I have to say about that. So we internally, we love data. We love our market reports, and we are going to be actually leading a quantitative review of major metro markets for multifamily investing and residential real estate, because that is our areas of focus and expertise. Please sign up for the next events because we are going to take people through all of the data that will actually reveal where we believe supply and demand factors are going to lead institutional capital and lenders and investors going into 2023, 24, and 25 and beyond. There's going to be a lot of great things that are happening in the residential markets, looking at office conversions, which were previously not considered as much, but now the world has changed. And you're going to see a tremendous amount of defunct old office space start turning into residential projects. And for EB-5 investors, that is also going to provide a very interesting opportunity where you can actually buy into a finished asset that used to be an office building and then watch it get converted with construction jobs into residential. And that will be something that provides very unique opportunity. You're also going to see urban markets and gateway cities start to get that return and flight to quality as economic, tumultuous times are about to hit in 2023. And with that, you're going to see the gateway cities and the return and flight to quality. So New York is already starting to see a little bit of a reverb. The San Francisco Bay Area, you're going to see venture capital, still raising $65 billion in 2022. There's a lot of money that needs to be deployed. You're going to see a lot of those kind of core themes that were universal truths in years past. Then everything gets knocked loose in COVID, but then the pendulum is about to come back. So, we'd love to talk about it, but we're going to have data to support it and to back it up, and then also be able to answer people's questions. So now we're going to open it up for the Q&A session. And if anybody has any open questions that they would like to have, or any content you'd like to hear in the future, please throw everything in the chat, and we'd love to answer those questions now. And you've got, 3 other extremely qualified professionals here that can help answer questions besides me. So do throw questions in there if you can. And if any of you see a question that you want to take right away, you can kind of go ahead and take a look at it. But, Greg, you can actually start us off with the expectation of processing times. Will they improve? When or how?
3 great questions, and I think there's an answer for all of those. I think that if you go back in time and look at the way that the office has built out and what it's experienced in the past few years, the Immigrant Investor Program Office, IPO, they hired a lot of people in 2018 and hit the 2017 backlog at the time. And they brought those people forward, trained them up, got them ready, hit the paperwork hard. Next thing you know, as we're moving, COVID comes in, impacts the USCIS budget. There's a freeze. Then the program shuts down. People leave. The government now has to hire people back to get to that 2018 staffing level. They're in the process of doing that. But, I can't give you the statistics, but off the top of my head, there was a significant decline in terms of personnel that could make adjudication decisions. They might have still had a lot of support staff and economists and FD&S officers and all that, but the number of stamps available went down significantly. And so I know they are focused on that because you can see it on usajobs.gov. You can see the openings out there. IPO chief Alyssa Emmel spoke to this recently at her engagement. The other thing that's important to consider is the how. Starting with the 829 forms, they're scanning these. They're making these available electronically, and that's going to speed up adjudications. And they could get to a point where they're hiring people nationwide and not just in the DC area. I moved from Houston to DC to work at headquarters. But in the future, when that many forms are available, they can meet the supply demand by hiring anywhere in the country. And when those forms are available, this is a lot of scanning. 829, the backlog might be 10, 11,000 forms. Looking at a 2, 3, 4 year backlog currently. So they are trying to get caught up by using technology to make these forms available to a number of staffers across the country. And that's going to help. That's going to make a significant dent in processing times for the 829. When? Tougher question. Government moves at the speed of government, right? We've been talking about scanning at IPO for years. And so for them to actually do it is a major step forward. What that rollout looks like internally, what the contractors are able to do and when, how they're able to roll that out to people and then bring the staffing up to the levels that they need to service that form type. TBD, everybody's hopeful. I know before I left, it was a major undertaking. We were all really excited about it. Because as an officer, if you work in Washington, D.C. and you have the opportunity to do your work on the computer somewhere else in the country, that might look attractive to you and your family. So it's a big thing for morale at IPO. They're making the changes that they need to. I think we're going to see processing time improve, especially in the 829 forms. On a quarter by quarter basis, we're going to see significant improvement. But to them to get to the point where they're absolutely fluid in 526s as well, that's going to take some time.
Questions came in, and two of them are kind of related, but one of them says, if you were a previous adjudicator, what's typically the biggest mistake you see people make with an I-526 filing? Like when you pick it up, what's the biggest thing that makes you cringe?
When it's a direct investment, I'm already starting going, I hope they get this right, because they may not. It's not that I don't like them. I enjoy seeing entrepreneurs step forward and bring their investment to my desk with the opportunity to create jobs. There's some great projects out there that people have taken on themselves, and some people have been successful. Many have not. They just don't always put themselves in the position that a regional center can by leveraging the economy of scale, by having multiple investors. Yeah. Colin, you know this. You can reach out to Baker Tilly. You can afford the $500,000 compliance materials. So for the individual investor, they might not have the best attorney or business plan. They don't know. So they haven't done the research and development to look at the market and see whether or not their project is going to be viable from a job creation and sustainment point of view. They don't necessarily understand what's required. They might say that we've got 15 part-time employees. Does that count? There's combination methods, but if it doesn't get there, or if the economics of that business get hit by something like a pandemic, you're going to get an RFE, and you're going the wrong way, and you're taking your family down an immigration path that could be harmful. That makes me cringe. From the project level, the 526s are, you're not looking at the business at that point anymore. You're investing in something that's already been approved. So when it comes to source of funds, you can work with a good legal team to try to address any potential problems. I wouldn't say that there's a trend of mistakes that people make with source of funds issues, other than not choosing the right team to work with, I guess. Because every situation is different. You want to make sure that you have a team that can really guide you through all the potential pitfalls before you put pen to paper and sign it. And
that makes a lot of sense. When you were an adjudicator, what was some of the things that made it an easy approval?
Consistency of credible documentation, credible evidence that's consistency internally and externally. So when I say consistency, what I mean, I want to make sure that the evidence you provide is probative of your eligibility factors. And so if you tell me that you're working for a company that I've never heard of, and there's not a lot of material to support that employment, and if I look it up and it's completely different than what you told me, then that inconsistency is going to be a problem. So when the source of funds, specifically documentation, comes in, I like to have a nice attorney letter with a nice narrative that tells me where you went to school, what you went to school for, and if that employment is based on your education, you can tie that together. You can show me where the tax returns are. You can show me where the income certifications are, depending on where you're from. And when these things are lined up, spelled out from A to B to C, and internally consistent now, I don't have a credibility concern. And now I can get to the probative number that I need to hit is 50 and a feather. If it's not 51% to 49, it's barely over 50. If I can get that as an adjudicator, I can knock out a lot of work quickly. And that really depends on the partnership that the investor has with their legal team to be able to tell their story in a manner that's easy for me to get.
So like based on what I'm hearing, the adjudicator's job on just kind of getting to 51, we'll call it 51%, so I don't have to use decimals, but getting to 51%, is it as easy as like an adjudicator really just looking at it and they're going to pop open a Google search and just try to cross-check?
They could cross-check if there's something that needs to be cross-checked. Yeah. A lot of adjudications are approvable on the paper that they're printed on. But there could be situations where a little bit more research is required. And that's as necessary. I mean, if somebody is getting their income from a small business, I might look them up to see if they're registered in the state that they said that they're in, So it really comes down to the situational elements of the credibility, but they can be done quickly when well presented.
Got it. So presentation does matter, just having it clean and right in front of you.
It means everything. Like if your papers are not in order and that takes more time for the adjudicator, that's not a reason for denial, but they could miss it. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation where all of a sudden, Exhibit 5 is not between 4 and 6, and it's after Exhibit 31. Okay, now the adjudicator might assume incorrectly that it's not in the file. So in simple things like that, the lawyers who aren't necessarily putting the files together could get tripped up if for some reason it's printed out wrong, things are shuffled, and it goes just logically speaking. If you look at it and there's a hole between 4 and 6, where are there more holes? What else got missed? Well,
we're also hoping that the USCIS mailroom improves, where things aren't getting dropped on the floor and mixed up, and maybe it wasn't our fault. Maybe people are having a hard time getting through the mailroom to find files. But hopefully, what do you think the chances are of e-filing making a comeback?
This was an opportunity to e-file with the new 956 forms, and our chief looked into it. She fought hard for it, and it takes more than just the chief of IPO saying, "I want to e-file," because she did, and she just, above our pay grades, somebody was like, "No, we're not ready for that." Could it happen in the future? Now with 829s being filed, I remember we had an Ellis program where you could do electronic filing for 526s. I even filed one myself. 10 years ago, I was like a unicorn in the office. Like, wow, you did an online filing. It can come back, and it really it blends to the direction that they're heading, because if you have an 829 form type that's now all electronic anyway, you're living a Control F life as an adjudicator, where you can find things if they're out of order by searching for terms that you need, K1, right? So like you can move a lot faster that way. And if online filing comes into, support that type of data now, then I think you're going to be in a world that's moving a lot faster.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Is there any other questions from the group? We still have 15 people that are joining with us and everything like that. Any questions for Peter or the rest of the team, Greg and Aaron? Happy to answer questions with the last couple of minutes that we have here. Otherwise, we will shut it down until we get to our next market event, where we'll talk more about the fundamentals in finance and real estate investing a little bit more than we did today. So last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll say goodbye for today. And the replays and everything will be sent out to everyone, as well as posted on the UEB-5 channel. And we'll go from there. So last call. And going once, twice, and sold. I guess we can close down. So again, Behring team, super proud of everybody on our side. Surviving almost 2 to 3 litigations in less than a 12-month span, and not losing any of them. We won all of them on the merits, anyways. And then now with 2022 RIA policy, and we're all back making progress toward our immigration and investment goals. So it was a huge 2022, and thank you to our investors and our supporters as well, our developers and everyone that we work with, all our partners. 2022 is a year of change, and 2023 and beyond should be even better. So again, thank you and happy holidays to everybody for 2022, and we'll see everyone in 2023. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.